For today's video, I want to run through the updated depth charts for you all now that the NFL draft and free agency is pretty much over with and we're going into OTAs and minicamp. I thought today would be a good opportunity to refresh everyone's memories on all the starters for offense and defense. Now, if you're going to be hanging out with us for this entire summer as the offseason kind of enters the dog days of it, hit the sub button down below. Help us reach our next kind of half milestone of 34,500 subscribers, and in return, we'll give you guys free daily content. But let's get into it, starting with the quarterback room, where I've got Deshaun Watson as QB1, of course, followed by Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson. DTR has been battling that hip injury he suffered towards the end of last year for much of the offseason, so I currently have Huntley slated as the QB3. But ultimately, the Browns have 4 quarterbacks right now who have all started multiple games in the National Football League. Someone's getting dealt in August, right? I don't see a way the Browns hold on to all 4 QBs. They're definitely not putting 4 on their 53-man roster. I don't think they're going to be able to cut a quarterback and get him onto their practice squad. So in my opinion, someone's getting traded, like we saw last year with Josh Dobbs to the Arizona Cardinals. There will be a QB-needy team, an injury will pop up, and the Browns are likely going to flip one of those 3 backups for a 5th, a 6th, or a 7th-round draft pick. We just don't really know who yet. Now, as for the running back room, Nick Chubb is RB1. I've got Jerome Ford as RB2, and then D'Onta Foreman ahead of Nyheim Hines. And then we've got a battle for some reserve spots with Pierre Strong Jr. and John Kelly and a UDFA and Robbins. But ultimately, until Nick Chubb returns, it is Jerome Ford and D'Onta Foreman battling it out for the kind of temporary starting running back role. Again, only until Nick Chubb returns. And I think Ford will have the slight edge, right? He is joining a Browns team, which of course drafted him. He was a starter for multiple games last year. He was a nice balance with Kareem Hunt. The X factor in my eyes isn't so much about Ford and Foreman and how well they can produce. It's really about Nick Chubb's return to 100%. And the wording is very specific here. Not Nick Chubb's return, all right? I want to know, what can the Browns do until Nick Chubb gets back to 100%? Because those 2 dates, return date and 100%, are usually not always the same. In fact, we have shared this graphic before about notable running backs who came back a year later after suffering multiple torn knee ligaments like Nick Chubb suffered, and it was not a very fruitful following season. Javonte Williams, the most recent example of this for the Broncos last year, he averaged less than 4 yards a carry and had 774 total yards. But it's not so much about, oh, they're back, that means they're 100%, right? I mean, look at these 3 players in their first 3 games back, and one thing that jumps out to me is not a huge workload awaiting them in their first 3 games back, right? They were definitely eased into it. And then even then, the production was, subpar. Williams and Dobbins averaging less than 4 yards a carry. So all eyes are going to be on Nick Chubb's return date. For me, I'm more curious about, he is Batman. I'm not going to bet against him, but when can the Browns get him back to 100%? Because I think there may be a few weeks of tuning up that has to go down first. As for the wide receiver room, Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, and Elijah Moore are your top 3 wideouts. And then you've got Cedric Tillman and David Bell, Jamari Thrash, who was just drafted, battling it out with Michael Woods, Jalen Darden, James Prochet for spots as wide receivers 4, 5, and 6. And I think you're going to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets with Ken Dorsey as offensive coordinator now, and the Browns really leaning into Deshaun Watson going full-time passer mode and not trying to complement the run game as much as before. Now, Cooper, Jeudy, and Moore, they all come off of, I would say, really strong seasons, more so for Cooper than the other 2. But Jeudy and Moore, I think, are going to be slated for pretty big roles in 2024, and there's a ton of belief in Jerry Jeudy this upcoming season. Last year with the Denver Broncos, he just never really found his groove. And in fact, that kind of can be extrapolated to all 4 seasons he spent in Denver. But the Browns have already given Jeudy a contract extension. So there's a lot of belief in Berea that Jeudy's going to live up to that contract extension, and the Browns are going to look back at it like, wow, can't believe we got Jerry Jeudy for that cheap. But ton of belief in Cleveland for Jerry Jeudy. Excited to see how he looks early in the offseason program. Speaking of Jerry Jeudy, something he has never been able to accomplish is reaching 1,000 receiving yards. So will he get to that number in 2024? Give me an O for over or a U for under for 1,000 receiving yards for the former first-round pick. Tight end room time. David Njoku, Jordan Akins, Giovanni, Ricci, followed by 2 UDFAs, one a few years ago, Zaire Mitchell-Payton, and one from this this draft, I guess you could say, Treviton Welch, I beg your pardon, out of Wyoming. The tight end room is pretty chalk. The Browns made very little additions at all to this room this offseason, so it's pretty much exactly how it was at the end of last year, minus Harrison Bryant being subbed out for Giovanni Ricci. Now, before we get on to the rest of our show today, I want to tell all of our wonderful viewers about Mando. Warm weather is here, which means certain parts of you will begin to sweat and smell. But kick the bad odor to the curb with Mando Whole Body Deodorant. Put it on your pits, package, feet, and beyond for whole body freshness. From the makers of Lumi Deodorant, this game-changing formula is safe for your entire body and knocks out odor like a champ. New customers, by the way, can get $5 off a starter pack at shopmando.com with promo code CHAT. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and yes, of course, free shipping. So luckily, I've got that discount code for all of our viewers today. Go to shopmando.com and use code CHAT for $5 off that starter pack. I put all that information for you guys in the comments and description of today's video, but that equates to over 40% off your starter pack when you use code CHAT at shopmando.com. The offensive line is next up, and you've got your usual starting 5. Jedrick Wills, Joel Bitonio, Ethan Pocic, Wyatt Teller, and I've got Jack Conklin regaining his starting spot. DeJuan Jones showed a lot of really good things last year, but ultimately, I think when both guys are back to 100% health, it will be Jack Conklin going out with the first-team offense at right tackle. There is clearly a lot of faith, and you're kind of noticing a trend that the Browns are making a lot of bets on certain guys returning back to their previous form before their injuries, like Nick Chubb at running back, like the 3 offensive tackles who all went under the knife with knee surgeries last offseason or this offseason and at the end of last year, where the Browns did not make any additions or major reinforcements at positions that suffered mightily last year due to injuries. There is a lot of belief that the Browns offensive tackle rehab is going to plan, and at least 2 of these 3 guys will be ready to roll for NFL Week 1. Defensive line time as we switch over the card. You've got Myles Garrett, Dalvin Tomlinson. I've got Shelby Harris taking over from Jordan Elliott as a starting defensive tackle, and then Za'Darius Smith with backups like Okoronkwo, Quentin Jefferson. Maurice Hurst, I think, will be one of the first DTs off the bench, along with Jefferson. And then Alex Wright, I've got him ahead of Isaiah McGuire, their 4th-round pick out of Mizzou last year. But at this point, I'm probably boring you a little bit because holy cannonball shit. A lot of depth on the defensive line for the Browns. I mean, we just went through a second line on the defensive line that could probably push to be starters elsewhere, right? I mean, Alex Wright last year showed a lot of faith and a lot of promise at the defensive line position, specifically when he was kicked inside to be like a 3-5 technique kind of player. And then you've got guys like Quentin Jefferson and Maurice Hurst who, I mean, would definitely compete, if not start, for a handful of other teams. So the Browns have given Jim Schwartz every single tool to work with to be successful this year. There is no shortage of depth on the defensive line. Their 2nd-round pick, Mike Hall, I did not even get to because they are that loaded at defensive line. Myles Garrett, Tomlinson, Harris, and Smith all return to Cleveland. The Browns are keeping the same core, the same unit together. Moved on from Jordan Elliott. They let the 49ers overpay him. But honestly, of the three free agent defensive tackles the Browns had to make decisions on last year, Jordan Elliott, Shelby Harris, and Maurice Hurst, I think they let the worst of the three guys walk. And the best of the three got the cheapest contract in Maurice Hurst. So I think it's a great job by Andrew Berry in this front office. As for the linebacker room, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Jordan Hicks takes over from Anthony Walker, and Devin Bush replaces Taki as well. This room right here is Cleveland's Achilles heel. I'm a big fan of JOK, and this is not a JOK slander piece, but this is a simple acknowledgement that JOK has dealt with injuries due to his lighter frame. And after JOK, show of hands, how confident are you guys in Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush to hold down the fort if something were to happen to number 6? Not a lot of hands up right now. So, sure, I think Jordan Hicks is adequate as a run stopper. Devin Bush has some really good traits, and the potential is there if Jim Schwartz can get it out of him. But ultimately, if there is a spot on Cleveland's roster that could begin to unravel, it would be the linebacker room. But if JOK, who you can see last year put up monster numbers, 100-plus tackles, 20 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, if he's able to stay healthy, I could start at linebacker next to them, and it's probably going to be one of the better linebacker rooms in the NFL because of just how much talent there is in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, how high I am on him as a player in 2024. So as long as he's able to stay healthy, Hicks and Bush just don't get in the way. But if something happens to JOK, I'm not sold on Hicks and Bush getting the job done. Now, as for the cornerbacks, you've got Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, and Greg Newsome all returning as the starters. Cam Mitchell, 5th-round pick last year out of Notre Dame, he could be one guy to keep an eye on to maybe push for a larger role in 2024, potentially be the first cornerback off the bench if an injury pops up. But ultimately, the Browns secondary last year was a huge asset to this team. It was such a strength of theirs, and I know it all crumbled and melted down in the playoff game, but I'm not going to look at what was 18 games last year and see 17 good games, 1 bad game, and decide, let's prioritize the bad game as a decision-making process for the upcoming offseason. I think the Browns were wise to keep Greg Newsome and to also add his 5th-year option. Keep that core intact for not just 2024, but 2025 as well. I like the secondary. I like the cornerbacks. As for the safeties, I think this is their deepest room across the roster. You can make legitimate arguments and points for 5 of these 6 guys to be starters. Juan Thornhill and Grant Delpit speak for themselves. Ronnie Hickman and DeAnthony Bell, a pair of UDFAs, were spectacular, I thought, last year, filling in for Thornhill and Delpit down the stretch when both guys battled injuries. And then there's Rodney McLeod, who I think knows he could start for a handful of other teams, but he wants to play under Jim Schwartz. He wants to play in this Browns defense, and he wants to play for this team because he believes this team is on the cusp of doing something special. And so he is sacrificing getting maybe a little bit more money or getting some more player time elsewhere to be a part of an awesome defense in Cleveland that was the best in the NFL last year. So really optimistic about this safety room. Even if they're not able to play, the 2 starters, Delpit and Juan Thornhill, all 17 games, which it was unfortunate that Thornhill last year just came into the season with a calf injury, never really went away, and then Delpit, an Iron Man, ever since he popped his Achilles his rookie year. He suffered an injury, of course, the day he signs his contract extension. But even then, the Browns have such great depth. I think we're going to see a lot of three safety looks like we did last year. And that's going to come at a price of only 2 linebackers on the field, which is fine because like we just went over, that is the Achilles heel of this Browns roster. As for the special teams unit, you got the same core for the most part. Dustin Hopkins, Corey Bojorquez, and Charlie Hewlett. Now, Nyheim Hines, I have penciled in as their initial punt and kick returner. He is coming back from a torn ACL last August, so not really sure when we can expect to see him back on the field. Until he does return, You could probably expect to see more James Prochet and Jerome Ford. I'll also sprinkle in a name like Elijah Moore. With the new kick return rules, it's safer for return men, which means teams may be willing to put higher profile players back at the kick return spot if that means they can get an extra yard or two without fear of that star player getting injured. Now, how would you guys rate the Browns roster? I'll turn it over to you and let me know. Scale 1 to 100 Madden style. I would give the Browns roster, gosh, I'm going to sound like such a homer, but like an 89 to 90. I really do think it is very complete. It's the best roster this franchise has ever seen. And the only thing waiting for them is consistent, above-average quarterback play from Deshaun Watson. And if they get that, we're looking at a 12-13 win team. All right, let's invite Cullen Brown on to wrap up the show. Cullen, which card would you like to pick?
I'm going to go 9 of clubs today. That's what I'm rolling with.
Producer Coop popped his head in the studio before we started filming and said 3 of diamonds. So I'll go one below that, 3 of spades. You ready?
I am ready.
I'm not. Here we go.
Come on.
What'd you say?
9 of clubs.
Not even close, dude. King of diamonds. King of diamonds. All right. I'll let you guys get back to the rest of your Monday afternoon and evenings. Appreciate you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.